beyond our galaxy. Beyond our galaxy. On today's show, we are going to be talking about a very interesting subject in astronomy. The subject is called Astronomical Instruments. The definition of an astronomical instrument is this: instruments used to study celestial objects. There are basically two different kinds of astronomical instruments. One, observational telescopes. Two, devices that study celestial objects more in depth. Ancient civilizations didn't have telescopes to use like astronomer Galileo Galilei had, but they still had an interest in astronomy. We will now briefly talk about three different kinds of civilizations that studied ancient astronomy. 1. Mesopotamians. 2. Egyptians. 3. British. Ancient Mesopotamia. This is where the beginning of the life is thought to have begun at. Both the Euphrates and Tigris rivers flow through this region. Modern-day Iraq is located here. The Mesopotamians had a device called Mo-Alpin. A Mo-Alpin is a calendar like today's modern one that had 354 days on it. Mo-Alpin. This was a device that contained 66 stars and constellations. This was used for both astronomy and astrology purposes. The ancient Mesopotamians also amazingly had a calendar like ours, as we just mentioned. Ancient Mesopotamian calendar. The Mesopotamians used the lunar calendar and had their length of days as close as ours, being 354 days a year. The Mesopotamians used astrology daily for agricultural purposes. Our next ancient astronomers we will be briefly talking about are the Egyptians. The Egyptians built their great temples, and this helped them to update their calendar. Here is a portion of a chart for Pharaoh Sinemet, found in his tomb. It shows the journey of the Pharaoh from the 18th dynasty as he journeys in the afterlife through the celestial sphere. The ancient Egyptians made these things called stone circles. These stones were used to help predict when the Nile River was to flood. The Egyptians worshipped the heavenly bodies in the celestial sphere. The Egyptian sun god was called Ra. These pyramids were built for the pharaoh that was to help them journey on their way to the heavens and the afterlife. Interesting enough, these three temple points are pointed directly at the next constellation, Orion the Hunter, and his 3 stars shown in his belt. How fascinating can this get? Our third and final culture study is this one called Stonehenge. This was built around 3100 BC. It is located in just west of Amesbury, England. Stonehenge is a line with the summer and winter solstice. Here's a picture of the sun seen through the Stonehenge. Here are some more awesome pictures for you to view. So just sit right back down in the easy chair, relax, and enjoy. Our first one is called an astronomical clock, located at the Place de la Cathedral. The clock has special mechanisms and dials on it. This clock is set in relation to the sun, moon, and zodiac constellation. Chinese astronomer Su Song, 1020 to 1101 AD. Scholar, bureaucrat, engineer, and diplomat. Here is a picture diagram of Su Song's clock tower design. This kind of clock also involves these other things as well. 1. Side wheel time. 2. Moon's eclipse. 3. Rotating star map. The gross horloge and Roan is an example of an earlier kind of astronomical clock. Here is a picture of Su Song's miniature model of the clock tower. This clock was developed by Chinese astronomer Su Song, who lived from 1020 to 1101 AD. Su Song developed a water-driven clock and placed it into the clock tower at Kenting City. This kind of clock came into existence during the Chinese Song dynasty in the 11th century. Our next astronomical instrument is called a helioscope. Italian astronomer Benedetto Castelli, 1576 to 1643. Astronomer, mathematician. Here is a picture of Castelli's drawing of the helioscope. Helioscope. This is an instrument used to observe the sun and the sunspots. The first helioscope was first used by Italian astronomer Benedetto Castelli, 1576 to 1643. Our next astronomical instrument is called an Armillary sphere. Armillary sphere, also known as spherical astrolabe. This is an instrument of the model of the Earth and side of it. This is a complex model with the Earth at the center of it. The Armillary sphere was invented by the astronomer seen in the next picture. Statue head figure of Greek astronomer Eratosthenes, 276 to 196 BC. Eratosthenes is credited with inventing the Armillary sphere. He was the chief librarian at the library located in Alexandria, Egypt. Here is a picture drawing of the sphere. The sphere was used to measure the longitude and latitude of the Earth, Note the letters on all the different parts of this model shows just how complex this model is. Here are some awesome pictures of space for you to view. So, just sit right back down in the easy chair, relax, and enjoy. Our next astronomical instrument is called an equatorium. A picture of the equatorium. This astronomical instrument is a calculating type instrument. This instrument calculates the distance of the sun, moon, and planets in the solar system. Here is a head statue of Greek philosopher Proclus Lyceus, 412 to 485 AD. Proclus is considered to be the inventor of the equatorium. Here is another picture of an ancient equatorium instrument. This astronomical instrument can be found in use during the 5th century under the direction of Proclus. Here is a virtual model of a 600-year-old equatorium instrument. Our next interesting astronomical instrument is called an Dioptre. Dioptre, a survey's instrument. Dioptre comes from the Greek word that means I observe. An instrument made up of a tube with lenses at both ends attached to and mounted on a stand. This device is mounted on a stand, being able to determine angles of different objects. It was invented by the person seen in the next picture. Greek astronomer Euclid of Alexandria from mid-4th century to mid-3rd century. Field of study, astronomy, and mathematics. Known for his treatise on geometry. Here's an example of how the diopter is used for measuring objects. Using this, the attacker can figure out how tall the castle is so he can use the right ladder size to get over the wall. Here is another picture diagram of what an older version of a diopter looked like. Our next interesting astronomical instrument is called a backstaff. Backstaff, an instrument used to measure the sun and moon in the celestial sphere. The instrument was used to measure the altitude of the sun and moon. English navigator John Davis, 1550 to 1605. This inventor was also an explorer as well. Davis invented the backstaff. Davis was familiar with the mariner's astrolabe, quadrant, and the cross staff. A backstaff is made up of these following things: 1 index mirror, 2 shade, 3 horizontal mirror, 4 protractor. Here's a picture example of how a person used the backstaff. When viewing the sun, the person was always kept the sun at his back. Hey Gal, what do you think about these cool astronomical instruments? Well, Nick, I think they're pretty cool, but not as cool as my own telescope is. Wow, gal, you're pretty attached to that thing, aren't you? Sure am, Nick. Just think, if I could have patented this thing, I could have been a millionaire. And if I could have published my book way before I died, I could have been one too, gal. I guess you could call us dreamers, Nick. You're both a couple of scammers. Hey, gal, there's your old buddy Ptolemy. He ain't my buddy, Dick. Hey, Ptolemy, I see the sun is at the center of the solar system. Better than scammers, I should sue both of you. Tisk, tisk, gal. I detect a little anger there. Anything I can't stand, Nick, is a sore loser. Our next interesting astronomical instrument is called a spectral helioscope. Spectral helioscope. This instrument was created so that it could study the sun and its different kinds of wavelengths of light from the sun. American astronomer George Hale, 1868 to 1938, field of studies, astronomy, astrophysics, invented this spectral helioscope instrument. Here is a picture diagram how this instrument is used. Our next astronomical instrument is called a Tusi couple. Tusi couple, a mathematical device. This device was invented to help determine the latitude motion of the inner planets. This device was invented by a Persian astronomer seen in the next picture. Persian astronomer Nasir al-Din al-Tusi. Astronomer, mathematician. Nasir invented this Tusi couple. This is a Tusi couple diagram. A smaller circle is placed inside a bigger circle. The smaller circle rotates around the bigger one on the inside of it. Here are some awesome pictures of space to view. So just sit right back down in your easy chair, relax, and enjoy. Our next astronomical instrument is called a sextant. A sextant, a celestial navigation instrument. The sextant has a graduate arc of 60 degrees. It measures the distances of the angular distance in the sky. The sextant was invented by the person seen in the next picture. Royal Navy officer John Campbell, 1720 to 1790. Navigational expert, astronomer, naval officer, lieutenant governor, inventor of the sextant. Here is a complex picture of the different parts of what the sextant is made up of. Here is a picture of a seaman using this astronomical instrument called a sextant. Our last astronomical instrument on today's show is called a celestial sphere. The celestial sphere. This device is a sphere with the Earth being on the inside of it. Above the Earth is an imaginary heavens where the sun, moon, stars, and planets can be viewed. The purpose of the sphere was to find the rising, setting of these celestial objects just mentioned. Greek astronomer Dioptres of Cnidus, 390 BC to 337 BC. Mathematician astronomer. This astronomer invented the celestial sphere and was a student of Claudius Ptolemy as well. Here's a picture diagram of what a celestial sphere looks like on paper. Well, seeing what different kinds of astronomical instruments were invented only goes to show how curious we Earthlings are about our universe. Hey Euclid, what do you think about that astronomer Ptolemy? I think he holds a grudge, Nasir, but I think that gal for sure is egotistic. The only straight guy on this show is Nick. Hey, thanks Nasir for saying that. It's a nice compliment. Who are you, dude? The dude's name here is Nicholas, or Nick for short. Nasar, that's the astronomer who turned the whole world upside down. Actually, I turned the world upside right with the truth. Yeah, and old Ptolemy wasn't very happy about that, Nick. Well, like I said before, Nasar, you win some, you lose some. Are you some kind of philosopher, Nick? No, sirree. Just an honest astronomer. That's what they all say. He sure sounds like a philosopher to me. Well, whatever he is, I still think, Nick, you're a cool dude. Well, thanks, Nasar. I think it's time for us to go now. I think this cool producer has a part 2 show coming up next on this subject. Well, guys, I'm out of here. But only time will tell what we Earthlings here on Earth will find when we look up into the night sky and beyond our galaxy.